does Hideo Kojima get his ideas? In this podcast, we take a deep dive into his brain and shed light on his creative process. Hideo Kojima presents Brain Structure.
はい、こんにちは、小島秀夫です。ポッドキャストプログラム、Hideo Kojima Presents Brain Structure.
Hello, Hideo Kojima here with the podcast program Hideo Kojima Presents Brain Structure. With me is my partner for the show.
Hello, Brains here. I look forward to recording with you again, Mr. Kojima.
はい、よろしくお願いします。
Let's get started.
The song you hear playing in the background of the Brain Structure intro was created by the Japanese artist Silent Poets. He is known around the world for his emotional dubstep music.
ありがたいですね。下屋に。
Yes, we were very fortunate to have Michiharu Shimoda create the song for us. And it's an original track. I mean, to think that Silent Poets made the music, it becomes hard to talk over it.
どうしようかな。
It's a very nice song. I'm really grateful.
What was your impression when you first heard it?
下屋っぽい。
It's a pure song, very Shimoda-esque. It almost seemed like a waste to add my voice over it, but since he created it with this purpose in mind, I'll take advantage of it.
Since we started today's episode with the subject of music, let's jump right into our main theme for today. Hideo Kojima on music. This time, we will hear all about Mr. Kojima's thoughts on music.
たっぷりってあんまりそんな時間
All of my thoughts? We don't have enough time for that.
Mr. Kojima, I've been told that there is an artist that you are a fan of lately. Which artist is that?
まあ、今っていうかずっと好きな
Well, it's not just lately. This is an artist that I have always loved. Nick Cave, or rather, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. I've long been a fan, so I have been listening to his stuff for quite some time.
For those of you who are hearing of Nick Cave for the first time, I will add a little explanation. Nick Cave is an Australian artist born in 1957.
はい、年上ですね。
Yes, he's older than I am.
He is not only a musician, but an author, a screenwriter, a visual artist, and an actor as well.
はい。もう小説家と
Yep,
か。
I own all his works, from his books to his photo collections. I have all his CDs and records too.
So you are a huge fan?
もうフルです。大ファンなんですけど
Absolutely, a huge fan. But I'm sorry, I must admit that I discovered him a little late. Nick Cave appeared in the movie Wings of Desire by Wim Wenders, right? At that time, he was gaining momentum in Berlin. Anyways, Nick Cave appeared in that scene, and that's where it all began for me. I wasn't there from the very beginning. You could say I was a little late to the party. But that's when I became a fan.
You discovered him in Wings of Desire and then became a fan of his music after that?
はい。まあ、あれ見たらみんなファンになります。
Anybody would become a fan after seeing him in that. I've always listened to electro pop and alternative music, especially from the UK. But Nick's music was something different, jazzy and a bit improvisational. His music and lyrics were not the kind of music I was used to listening to, and that's why I became a fan. I bought all his stuff. Once, a Japanese version I got from Mute Records came with a book Nick Cave wrote. It was a limited first edition, and it wasn't translated. It was in the original English language. So I can't read it, but I'm happy just to own it.
I see.
結構後に翻訳版出
And
ました
then eventually, a translated version was published. Around this time, I would always get my hands on the limited first editions and would buy various versions of the CDs. That's how much I like this band. One time, former Bad Seeds member Blixa, who's now with Neubauten, came to perform at the Licket Room in Shinjuku, and I went to their show. I was the only Japanese person there.
I see. So even though the live house was in Japan, you were the only Japanese person there?
うん、でもあれ、
But I'm really glad I went.
I see. Let's take this opportunity to play some music. Let me briefly explain how the music will work on this Spotify podcast. Everyone subscribed to Spotify Premium will be able to listen to the full version of the songs, while those listening for free will get a 30-second preview of each song. We will now play a song by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. Would you please introduce it for us, Mr. Kojima?
はい、まあものすごい好きな。
Of course, it's a well-known song that I really love. Well, I'm pretty sure everyone already knows this song. Without further ado, here is Into My Arms.
Candle for you to make bright and clear your path, and to walk like Christ in grace and love and guide you into my arms. Into my arms, oh Lord, into my arms, oh Lord, into my arms, oh Lord.
今 Into My Arms 聞いていただきましたけど、
We just listened to Into My Arms. It's a song that has been used in movies, and I actually thought about using it for the ending of Death Stranding. The lyrics and the vibe would have fit really well. So I had that song in mind when I made the ending. And since Norman Reedus is an acquaintance of Nick Cave, I was hoping he could introduce us. But at the time, Nick Cave was going through some family stuff, so I decided not to ask him. But I really would like to collaborate with him one day. If he's listening right now to Brain Structure, I hope you'll send me an email.
Nick, we'll be waiting for you to get in touch.
はい、
Yes.
Also, the French documentary The Velvet Queen features music composed by Nick Cave and Warren Ellis, a member of the Bad Seeds. I've heard this was a very good film.
そもそもですね、これ公開
First of all, this was released quite a while ago, but it came to Japan really late. Many people reached out to me on social media to tell me that Nick Cave and Warren Ellis were doing the music, so I was looking out for it. There's an old movie called The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, and these two also created the soundtrack for that. That's when I started collecting the soundtracks of these two, like The Road and Wind River. I also bought their new record that they released last year. It's really good. It was the best release of last year, at least for me.
で、そういうこともあってこのサントラ
So anyways, I just bought the soundtrack since at least that was released. I didn't think the movie was going to be released in Japan, and it wasn't available on any subscription service or Blu-ray, so I just had to make do with listening to the soundtrack by itself. But then, the distribution company contacted me saying that the movie was going to be released in Japan and sent me a CD, even though I already owned the CD.
みたいなんですけど、で
So that's how I ended up watching the movie.
I see. Let me introduce the movie a bit. The Velvet Queen is a French documentary that captures the lives of the wild animals living in the harsh nature of the Tibetan highlands. World-renowned wildlife photographer Vincent Munier and author and geographer Sylvain Tesson document their journey through the beautiful Tibetan Plateau Wildlife Sanctuary. It received the Best Documentary Award at the 47th César Awards. It was released in France in December 2021 and in Japan on August 27th, 2022.
これはですね、まあドキュメンタリーなんですけど、
The Velvet Queen is classified as a documentary, but it's really just a very beautiful film. I would place it in the top 3 films I've seen this year. There were a lot of wild animal documentaries in my day. Everyone visits the zoo, and I like zoos too. Oh, and everyone posts videos and pictures of their cats and dogs on YouTube and social media, right? Those are just family photos. But what I'm talking about with this movie is different. Wild animal documentaries like this really showcase how incredible these animals are. There aren't many shows that do that, and if you watch this movie, you'll understand. And at the end, they play Nick Cave's song, We Are Not Alone, and the viewers really feel included in that we. Dogs and other pets, zoo animals too, they're all part of our family along with us humans, though we're the top predator. We're all friends.
That's right.
でそうじゃなくて、
But not here. In this documentary, they go deep into the mountains, covering their scent so they can't be tracked, and try to capture footage of the wild animals there. It's really amazing. You can discover the true meaning of a documentary through this film. I want everyone to see this. Death Stranding is also based on the idea that we are not alone. Even if you think you're alone, you find other people out there, and from there, you have a connection. And in this case, the we refers to us humans, the top predator.
I see.
なんですよ、これを見たら、
But once you see the film, you realize this we refers not just to us, but also includes the wild animals out there. When you first look at it, you think, cool, so this is Tibet, and you don't really see anything at all except the scenery. But there are shadows on the sides of these mountains, shadows made from caves and such, and if you look closely enough, you'll see there are actually animals there. When you see their faces and your eyes meet, it's really spectacular. You really understand that we are not alone.
その感覚っていうのはなかなか
That
今の
feeling is not something you can experience very often on TV or in movies or on YouTube. I really want everyone to check this movie out. And of course, the music is wonderful too. You mentioned this a bit earlier, but the photographer and the geographer are French. The director is a French woman, and it was probably just the three of them who went on this journey. Well, the director never appears on the screen, but the fact that she's there is given away by some of the lines.
なんですけど、この
So anyway, it's the two guys on camera, and one of them is pretty philosophical, and everything he says is so deep. And just hearing the conversations between these two, it's something else. And they talk about whether they'll be able to see the elusive snow leopard. That's the main story, but if they really wanted to see one, they could visit a zoo.
Yes, they do have snow leopards there.
なんで日本でもいっぱいいますから
Yes, there are quite a few in Japan too. If you do a bit of research, you could probably go visit one. But what they're trying to do is find a wild snow leopard. That's the whole point. If you go see this movie, you start thinking about the we in We Are Not Alone. Now there are wars and poverty and crime and the COVID pandemic too. But if you start thinking about the we part on a more macro scale, your outlook will really change. And then that wonderful song plays and you lose your words. Like if the people taking the footage heard the song playing at the moment, they would weep. When Nick Cave's song starts to play, you hear the lyrics for We Are Not Alone, and they are just perfect. They align perfectly with what these two guys were talking about.
結局、
When I look at the vast lands of Tibet, it doesn't seem that different from Death Stranding. The scenery is quite similar, and when you're surrounded by nature on such large scale, you realize just how tiny humans are in contrast. And these two guys go searching for these animals, and they realize that these animals have been watching them too, observing them. And that's the essence of We Are Not Alone. The relationship between those who go to observe and those being observed. In the end, Nick Cave really encapsulates that feeling with the lyrics. I cried there at the end.
The animals were watching too?
動物が見てるこっ
The
ち
animals were watching in their direction. So it wasn't just the two of them going to find these creatures, but the creatures were also watching them the whole time. And it's a different experience than human civilization, in that they are meeting on the same earth. They're out there living, and we're here living. The cats and dogs that become our families. They're no different than humans. But these creatures in the documentary are of different dimension. And to witness that is the essence of We Are Not Alone.
I see. And because of that, there are snow leopards in Tibet. Is that what you are trying to say?
そうなんですよ、まあ、動物園
Exactly. Of course, it's important to see snow leopards at the zoo too, but these two visited the wild Tibet with no assurance of actually being able to find them. They set up all their camera equipment, but it's very hard to come across them. But then, just for a second, the moment is there, and it's marvelous. The two of them start weeping, but then it's so cold that their tear begins to freeze.
ほんならもう寒いから凍って
Their eyelashes and tears are frozen. But anyways, you can really empathize with them. We, the viewers, obviously didn't go to Tibet and experience the same cold, but you can understand their feelings through watching the film. It's a very crucial film, especially in our current society. You don't see many movies like that. I think a lot of people might lose interest when they hear it's a wildlife documentary. I'm sure they go see movies where the main character's a cute dog and saves the day or something. The two guys only look from a distance because they can't get too close. They have footage that's out of focus or night vision too, But yeah, I want everyone to see this. I'm sure these two's family life isn't so great though.
なんでいいよ
Like, why are you neglecting your family? I gotta go find snow leopards. They also go knowing that they could possibly die. They don't know when they'll be back and they have no phone service out there. They're kind of like astronauts. They won't come back until they have gotten what they came for.
So you feel really sympathetic towards them.
あの二人の行動って
Yeah, and watching the two of them, there were a number of times I was like, oh, I get it. I mean, they're traveling to get footage of animals, but ultimately their goal is the same as mine. They want to give it all they've got, and there is a return for the effort they put in, and that is amazement. I really want other creators to watch this movie. But then you see the snow leopard, and it isn't as masculine and handsome as I had expected.
あれみたいな
So it's less about what you see and more about the process and the actions taken to search for these animals.
まあどっかにおるんでしょうけど
Yeah, I mean, the snow leopards are always out there somewhere, but you wouldn't usually get the chance to see them. But just because we don't see them doesn't mean they don't exist. They're out there because we are not alone. And their spirit of curiosity. The two guys go through all that, and it's not like they're trying to catch the creature. They just watch from afar and are moved to tears. You start to cry just watching those two middle-aged guys. And that's where the excellent music of Nick Cave and Warren Ellis comes into play. Maybe this is the #1 film of this year. And they made a Japanese version of the soundtrack based on the imported soundtrack. It's a CD, so people should definitely check it out.
Both the soundtrack and the movie.
これどうなんですかね
It really gets you thinking. The two of them head off into the mountains and pitch tents out in the cold. And then suddenly these children appear out of nowhere. These little kids are out there playing like it's normal. They're like, hi. And it turns out they're kids from families living in the Tibetan mountains. And we get to see their home. When you see that, you realize that people can live out there, even in that harsh wilderness.
Despite it being an incredibly harsh and unusual environment for those two men.
ずっと望遠鏡を見てるんですよ
Yeah, the two guys are always looking through the telescopes, and these kids find them, and they come over. They seem to already know each other, but they start playing together and visit the kids' home. And really, the guys from the big cities are the ones that look really unusual and out of place there. And you realize it's not just snow leopards out there. There are kids living there too.
Have those children seen the snow leopards?
見てると思うんですよ雪を
I think so. They're like, you think the snow leopard's over there? But the kids are too busy playing with the guy's cell phone since it's such a rarity out there. But you see that, and somehow it all seems quite idyllic. And then the guys start bad-mouthing Paris. Those two live in Paris, and they start talking about how sad it is that parks have disappeared, and there's a lot of disrespect towards nature. But in Tibet, this natural environment is normal, and there are actually people living there. They're living with nature. They showcase this in a really smart way too. It's not just about let's protect the environment, but they also show that there is a family that coexists with nature.
I see.
もうパッと見ほとんど
At first glance, it doesn't feel like there are any animals out there. But if you look closely, you start to see them. And then as the movie progresses, you realize there are people out there too. So we are not alone. The only people who don't understand are the city people.
For people in the cities, all they know is city people. However, when they go out into the wilderness and nature, they realize that it's not just people out there. Nick Cave, we would really love to have you join us here.
ねニック系どう
Yes, I would love Nick Cave and Warren Ellis to make the soundtrack for a game. Are you guys listening? Over?
Let's try to get this message to them. And with that, we are just about at time. We certainly heard a lot about music and films today. Now, let's move on to our next segment.
Hideo Kojima presents Brain Stretcher.
はい、ここからはゲームジャーナリスト
It's time for a segment featuring game journalist and TV presenter Jeff Keighley in his one-man show, TGA, The Jeff's Answer. What news will he bring us today? Let's hand it over to Jeff.
TGA, the Jeff's Answer.
Hi everyone, it's Jeff Keighley with another episode of TGA, the Jeff's Answer. And this time I thought I'd answer a frequent question that I get, which is how do you put together the world premiere announcements for the Game Awards? The Game Awards over the past decade has become the home to many amazing new game announcements. We even announced the new Xbox Series X console in 2019. So a popular question is, well, how do these announcements come about? It's really different for each game, but I will say some studios come and reach out to us and pitch us on their games. We can't say yes to everything, and it's hard for me sometimes to make selections of which games we show. And there are other games, some of the bigger games, where we actually go out and I will go visit a developer, or I will fly and see their game, and I will try to convince them that the Game Awards is the right place for them to announce their game. We are always so deeply humbled and honored when these game developers decide to entrust us with their announcement. Oftentimes studios work for years and years to create their games, so when they choose the Game Awards as a platform to make the announcement, we want to do everything we can to make them feel like it was the right place to debut their game. We also, sometimes have to think about the mix of games. We want to make sure that there are not too many science fiction games or too many first-person games, so we have to think about the type of game and the genre and the tone of it. And also, we need to think about what we're going to show, which is in-engine games versus gameplay versus sort of computer-generated, pre-rendered cinematics. All those things factor into what becomes the Game Awards every year. But of course, we're only as good as the games that are being made. And one of the things that keeps me up at night is worrying that we're not going to have enough to share with the fans. And since we don't make the games, we're really fully reliant on the game developers to hopefully have good announcements that are ready for us. The past few years with COVID and the pandemic has really delayed development of many games, so it's been a challenging few years, but I think this year we're going to have some really great things to share with fans, even though the expectations are through the roof. So there are lots of rumors, lots of speculation about things that might or might not be at the Game Awards, and that's part of the fun of the show. But I am so honored that we get to make this show every year, and it has become the home to some really exciting new game announcements. So we're working very hard on the Game Awards. You're going to see lots of new games announced this year. You're going to see lots of updates on games that have been announced, but people want to see more footage and details on. It's going to be a very special night. So that's what I'm working on right now, behind the scenes of the Game Awards. Thanks for listening to this episode of TGA.
はい、早くもエンディングのお時間です。
There we have it. It's time to wrap up.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kojima. It was a pleasure to hear you speak so passionately about Nick Cave and Warren Ellis's work.
はい。では最後にですね。
We will end today with the soundtrack from The Velvet Queen, the song We Are Not Alone. It plays during a very emotional ending scene. The first part is primarily instrumental with ambient sounds, but in the second half, Nick Cave's vocals kick in. The song is 9 minutes and 40 seconds long, but to end the show, we'd like to play the song for you. See you again on next week's episode of Hideo Kojima Presents Brain Structure.
さようなら。
Wow! Nick Cave and Warren Ellis, We Are Not Alone. I was moved for the whole 9 minutes and 40 seconds. On the next episode. Hideo Kojima himself will dive deep into Death Stranding, which has celebrated 3 years since its release. So don't miss it.